The Empress of the Vrax Dominion expected groveling surrender, not an invitation to view humanity's most devastating ancient weapon. She laughed, certain the sealed stasis case held a rusted blade or the bones of a forgotten king. But when the elderly curator opened the biometric lock and the chamber filled with nitrogen vapor, the Empress saw not a relic, but a breathing warrior in unbroken battle plate, eyes snapping open with the cold, patient fury of a species that evolved hunting the deadliest predators on its own death world. Some artifacts are not meant to commemorate the past. They are insurance policies for the future. And this one just woke up. The warrior was no myth. He was the last Praetorian, a living weapon sealed in suspended animation 6 centuries ago for a scenario exactly like this. An alien invasion Earth could not repel through conventional means. His existence was humanity's final insurance policy, a contingency so secret even most of our own leaders believed it was legend. The question now was not whether the Empress would regret her laughter. It was whether anyone in that hall would survive long enough to offer a surrender. The Vrax Dominion had conquered 17 star systems before reaching Earth. Their method was always the same: arrive with overwhelming force, demand unconditional surrender, and annihilate any species that refused. Empress Xyla herself had crushed the Cathari Hive, the Drow Consensus, and the Belt Kingdoms of Proxima. She did not negotiate. She collected worlds like trinkets. When her fleet dropped out of warp on the edge of Sol, Earth's orbital defense grid flickered to life, but the Vrax had already learned to bypass human encryption. The planetary shields were useless. Within hours, her flagship, the World Reaper, hovered above the Atlantic, casting a shadow that dimmed the sun over half of Europe. The Empress demanded to meet the planetary leader. Humanity's High Council, terrified and fractured, had no unified response. So she was offered a detour: the Terran Cultural Preservation Hall, a museum housing the relics of humanity's bloodiest eras. The curator, Alden Vance, had personally requested the audience. He promised to present Earth's most devastating ancient weapon, a gesture of transparency before the negotiation. The council thought it was a stalling tactic. The Empress thought it was a joke. She accepted, intending to mock the display as an example of human desperation. Vance was not a diplomat. He was the third generation of his family to guard the hall's deepest vault, a wing sealed since the 22nd century. He knew the truth behind the legend of the last Praetorian. While the rest of humanity believed the warriors of the Iron Peace were extinct, Vance's grandfather had passed down the biometric key and a single instruction: if Earth ever faced an existential threat that conventional forces could not match, open the case. No president, no general could override the decision. The curator alone decided whether the insurance policy was triggered. The Praetorian program began in the aftermath of the final consolidation wars in 2187. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself with bioweapons and autonomous kill swarms. The survivors realized that a species capable of self-annihilation required a failsafe against external conquest. Volunteers from the last warrior orders were genetically enhanced to operate at impossible speeds, their aggression calibrated and then locked away. They were placed in stasis pods that suspended consciousness without cellular decay, kept alive by a loop of nanorepair fluids and cryogenic nitrogen. The intention was never to unleash them on human conflict, only to deter alien extinction. Vance had studied the records. He knew the Praetorian's designation: Unit 7, real name lost to classification. He knew the suit's memory plates could self-heal from most energy weapon impacts. He knew the warrior's reflexes had been clocked at 6 times faster than any natural predator. But knowing a storm is coming does not prepare you for the wind. As Vance led the Empress and her honor guard into the hall's inner sanctum, he kept his face calm, even as his hand trembled on the cane he carried. The stasis display stood at the center, a coffin-like structure of reinforced obsidian and cold iron, inscribed with warnings in dead languages. The Empress laughed before the case was even opened. She saw a primitive reliquary, a desperate bluff from a species too frail to resist. Her guards exchanged amused glances, their plasma rifles humming with contempt. Vance did not correct her. He placed his hand on the biometric lock, the scanner reading his genetic signature and the unique tremor pattern of his pulse. The mechanism hissed, nitrogen vapor spilled onto the marble, and the seam of the casing parted. The chamber revealed a figure in burnished bronze plate, helmet sealed, utterly motionless. For 3 heartbeats, even the Empress fell silent, sensing something was wrong. Not because the warrior looked dead, but because he looked ready. And then his eyes snapped open. Pupils contracted, targeting arrays lit up inside his helmet display, and 6 centuries of preservation peeled away in a surge of adrenaline. The last Praetorian had been programmed to identify the primary threat in any room within 0.3 seconds. His gaze locked onto the towering reptilian Empress before she could exhale her next mocking breath. The insurance policy was now active, and the Empress still thought she was holding the pen. What happened next was not a battle. It was a biological function, performed with the grim efficiency of a heartbeat. The Praetorian's helmet retracted into the collar of his armor, revealing a face that had not aged a single day in 6 centuries. His jaw was set, his eyes cold and pre-focused, as if the entire engagement had been rehearsed 1,000 times in his suspended dreams. The first Vrax guard never even raised his rifle. The Praetorian crossed the 5 meters between them in a blur of burnished bronze, a single leg sweep shattering the alien's armored kneecap backward. Before the guard's scream could leave his throat, the warrior wrenched the plasma rifle from his grip, reversed it, and drove the stock through the Vrax's energy shield, caving in his chest plate. The second guard fired. A searing bolt of plasma crossed the marble hall, aimed directly at the Praetorian's unprotected head. But the warrior was no longer there. He dropped into a slide, the superheated air crackling above him, and came up inside the second guard's reach. A sharpened edge of his forearm plate, now deployed as a monomolecular blade, sliced clean through the guard's weapon arm at the elbow. The alien staggered back, howling, and the Praetorian was already moving to the third. Empress Zyla, frozen in something she had never felt before, terror screamed into her command gauntlet. All units converge on the museum. Kill the human, kill them all. Her voice echoed uselessly against the stone walls. The communications channel emitted nothing but static. The Praetorian's suit had triggered a localized dampening field the moment his vitals went active. No signals in, no signals out. The Empress was no longer a conqueror. She was a hostage trapped in a vault with a predator. The remaining 4 guards tried to form a defensive screen around her. They raised their heavy energy shields, overlapping them into a barrier that could withstand a tank round. The Praetorian stopped. He stood perfectly still, 10 meters away, his blades dripping with alien blood. He tilted his head as if assessing an equation. Then he spoke for the first time, his voice a low, augmatic rumble that resonated through the armor's external speakers. Shield frequency analysis complete. Before the guards could process the words, the Praetorian hurled a small disc, a gravity tether, that latched onto the lead shield. The tether pulsed once, amplified the local gravitational constant by a factor of 40, and wrenched the shield downward with 7,000 kilos of sudden force. The guard's arm shattered. The shield wall broke. In the chaos that followed, the Praetorian was a ghost. He did not fight the remaining guards so much as pass through them. A palm strike to a throat, a knee to a spine, a redirected plasma bolt into a chest. Each motion flowed into the next without hesitation. Within 11 seconds, all 6 elite guards lay motionless on the marble, either unconscious or unable to continue. The hall, which moments before had echoed with imperial laughter, now smelled of ozone, scorched metal, and reptilian blood. The Empress stood alone. Her ceremonial plasma scepter, more symbol than weapon, trembled in her clawed grip. She was 7 feet of armored scale and arrogant conquest, and she had never been more afraid. The Praetorian stepped toward her, his bronze plates self-repairing the minor scorch marks from the plasma fire. He did not kill her. Instead, he reached behind her head, ripped the command interface from her cranial implant, and held it up to the light. A tiny data spike extended from his gauntlet, piercing the device. His eyes flickered for a moment as information poured into his neural link. Curator Vance, who had not moved from beside the open stasis casing, finally spoke. Praetorian, your objective is the defense of Earth and the neutralization of hostile command. The Vrax fleet is in orbit. Their invasion protocols are keyed to this Empress. If she dies, the fleet automatically executes sterilization of the planet. The Praetorian turned to look at Vance. Then she won't die, he said. She'll transmit surrender. The Empress snarled, regaining a sliver of composure. You think I will bow to a single soldier? My ship, the World Reaper, carries enough firepower to crack this continent. Your museum is a tomb. The Praetorian ignored her. He looked upward toward the high vaulted ceiling of the sanctum. Initiate Omega Protocol, he said, speaking directly to the hall's dormant systems. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the floor beneath them shuddered. The walls, which the Empress had dismissed as ancient stonework, split along hairline seams. Hidden compartments rolled open, revealing not more relics but row after row of stasis pods identical to the one that had held the Praetorian. 20 chambers, 40, 108. Each one hummed with the steady green light of active preservation. The entire museum was a weapons cache, built beneath the guise of a cultural monument. The Empress's mockery evaporated. She was not standing in a museum. She was standing in the armory of humanity's last and most dangerous generation of soldiers. The insurance policy was not one warrior. It was a legion, and the Praetorian had just sent the activation signal. The 108 stasis pods began to hum louder. The green lights shifted to amber, then to a steady, urgent pulse of crimson. One by one, the seals cracked open, releasing plumes of cryogenic vapor into the vaulted chamber. The Empress watched in disbelief as armored figures stepped out, identical in design but each bearing the subtle customization of their own lost identity. They were men and women, their faces blank from suspended sleep, but their eyes, when they opened, held the same predator clarity as the first Praetorian. This was not an army. This was a kill chain designed to decapitate any invasion force that reached Earth's surface, and it had just gone fully online. Curator Vance, still leaning on his cane, addressed the Praetorian. Unit 7, the warriors require neural synchronization. They have been dormant for 600 years. Their reflexes will be sluggish until the hive link establishes. The Praetorian nodded, touching the side of his helmet. A silent data cascade rippled through the hall as his combat memory uploaded to the newly awakened cohort. Within seconds, the sluggishness vanished. 108 warriors moved as one, their armor plating realigning, their blades deploying in a synchronized chorus of metallic clicks. The Empress's composure cracked further. She was not facing a single soldier anymore. She was facing the concentrated aggression of a species that had once nearly destroyed itself and had bottled that fury for a rainy day. The Empress tried one last gambit. She lunged for the Praetorian's exposed throat with her claws, hopping to kill him before the others could react. She never touched him. The nearest female warrior intercepted her, grabbing the Empress's wrist and twisting it behind her back with enough force to fracture the armored scales. The Empress screamed, a sound that echoed through the marble halls, a sound no Vrax monarch had ever made in the presence of lesser species. But this species was no longer lesser. The Praetorian did not even turn around. He was already accessing the hall's deep systems through his neural link, pulling up a real-time tactical display of the Sol system. The Vrax fleet hung in high orbit like a black cloud, 43 warships including the World Reaper. They had begun repositioning for a bombardment formation. The moment the Empress's signal jammer had activated, the fleet's AI would have flagged an anomaly. They were now running a diagnostic, but they lacked the Empress's override codes to confirm planetary surrender. The Praetorian saw the window, approximately 8 minutes before the fleet's command protocols escalated to full sterilization. But then the tactical display flickered. A new signal had appeared, originating from the World Reaper itself. It was an automated counterbreach, a viral code sent to overload the museum's dampening field. The Empress smirked through her pain. My ship's Admiral Thorax is not a fool, she hissed. He knows I am compromised. He will not wait for confirmation. He will burn your world to ash regardless of whether I am on it. The Praetorian checked the code. The dampening field was indeed degrading. In 60 seconds, external communications would flood back, and the first thing that would happen was Thorax ordering the orbital bombardment. The ground battle was irrelevant if the planet was glassed. This was the "it gets worse" moment. Not only was the Empress a hostage that the enemy might write off, but the human High Council, scrambling in bunkers beneath Geneva, had just sent a panicked message through the weakening field. The council president's voice crackled on the museum speakers. "Curator Vance, we are detecting a weapons lock from the Vrax flagship. They're targeting North America. We are initiating unconditional surrender protocols. Stand down, whatever you're doing. You're going to get us all killed." The Empress laughed bitterly. "You see, your own leaders would rather kneel than fight. Surrender is your nature." The Praetorian cut the transmission. He turned to face his cohort. "The fleet believes surrender is their only option. They are wrong. The insurance policy was written to override cowardice. We are the final override." He grabbed the Empress by the back of her neck and began dragging her toward the hangar below the hall, a hidden chamber where a sleek, stealth-capable assault shuttle had been waiting for 6 centuries. The 108 warriors followed in perfect formation. The plan was audacious. Use the Empress's biosignature to bypass the World Reaper's security, board the flagship, and physically force Admiral Thorax to stand down. It was exactly the kind of insane, direct assault humanity had built its reputation on. But as they reached the hangar, the dampening field collapsed completely. Thorax's voice boomed across all channels. "Empress Zyla is dead to the Dominion. Commence planetary sterilization. Launch the planet Cracker." A colossal missile detached from the World Reaper's underbelly, its warhead glowing with dark energy. The countdown had begun. 7 minutes until impact. The Praetorian did not hesitate. He shoved the Empress into the shuttle and ignited the engines. Humanity's final hour was not a negotiation. It was a boarding action. The shuttle screamed out of the hidden hangar, tearing through the museum's collapsing facade and rocketing toward the upper atmosphere. The 108 Praetorians filled the troop bay, silent and still as statues, their armor drinking the dim light. The Empress sat restrained in the center, her cranial interface still plugged into the ship's computer against her will. The Praetorian said nothing. He was already running the numbers. 6 minutes and 53 seconds until the planet Cracker struck the Atlantic. The World Reaper's shields were impenetrable from the outside, but a shuttle carrying the Empress's own biosignature, that was a key no Vrax system could refuse. They crossed the atmospheric boundary in 41 seconds, the hull screaming with friction. The Vrax fleet lay ahead, a dark constellation of angular warships. The World Reaper dominated the center, its underbelly still glowing with the launch trace of the planet Cracker. The missile was halfway to Earth, a streak of sickly violet light accelerating toward its target. The Praetorian opened a channel to the flagship. "Empress Zyla requires extraction. Hostile human forces have compromised the surface. Stand down the bombardment and open docking bay 7. Admiral Thorax's voice crackled back after a 2-second delay. "Empress Zyla is declared deceased under Invasion Protocol 9. This transmission is a human deception. All batteries target the shuttle." But the Praetorian had anticipated this. He had already sliced into the Empress's neural implant and extracted the fleet's emergency override cipher. Before Thorax could finish his command, the Praetorian transmitted the cipher on a closed quantum frequency. The World Reaper's automated security acknowledged the Empress's authority as alive and overriding. The docking bay doors slid open despite the Admiral's protests. The shuttle shot inside, landing with a bone-jarring crunch on the Vrax carrier deck. The ramp didn't descend. It blew off its hinges, and the Praetorian stormed out into the enemy's heart. The interior of the World Reaper was a labyrinth of dark alloys and humming energy conduits. Alarms blared. Vrax crew members scrambled for weapons. The first wave was a squad of 10 armored enforcers blocking the main corridor. The Praetorian didn't slow. He signal-linked to his cohort still aboard the shuttle, and they emerged in a synchronized burst, a bronze wave of death. The Vrax enforcers fired plasma volleys. The Praetorians deflected with their self-healing plates and closed the distance. In 12 seconds, the corridor was silent. The warriors pressed forward toward the bridge. Admiral Thorax watched the security feeds, his scaled face contorting with rage. He ordered the bridge sealed, then accessed the planet Cracker's manual detonator. If he couldn't kill the humans on the surface, he would kill them in orbit. He began the sequence to overload the missile's core, turning it into a decoy, a massive explosion that would still shatter the North American continent. The countdown dropped to 3 minutes. The Praetorian felt the shift in the ship's power readings through his link. He knew exactly what Thorax was doing. He pushed harder, slamming through blast doors with a gravity hammer he ripped from a dead enforcer. They reached the bridge bulkhead, a reinforced door 3 meters thick. The Praetorian placed his palm against the metal, his suit analyzing the alloy composition. "Thermal resonance found," he muttered. He turned to one of his warriors who carried a plasma caster salvaged from the fight. "On my mark, fire concentrated bolt at the left seam." The warrior nodded. 3 seconds later, a sustained stream of plasma bored through the hinge. The Praetorian kicked the door inward with a force that bent the frame, and he stepped onto the bridge. Admiral Thorax stood beside the main console, his claw hovering over the detonator. 6 Vrax officers surrounded him, weapons raised. The Praetorian did not attack. Instead, he dragged the Empress forward, still bound. "Empress Zyla lives," he said, his voice calm. "Order the fleet to stand down. Disarm the planet Cracker. Or I will kill her myself and let your protocol default to the Admiral's failure." Thorax hesitated. The Empress, her pride shattered but survival instincts intact, croaked, "Stand down, Thorax. The humans have a recursion plan. They have hundreds more of these warriors. This planet is a trap." The Admiral's eyes widened. He looked at the tactical display, which now showed signals from multiple museum sites across Earth, each activating stasis pods. It was true. Thorax lowered his claw. He keyed the abort code. The planet Cracker, now only 90 seconds from impact, received the override. Its warhead deactivated, the violet light fading, and the missile banked harmlessly into the ocean, splashing down with a great plume of steam and nothing more. Earth was safe. The fleet powered down its weapons. The Vrax Dominion, for the first time in its history, retreated from a conquest without firing a full salvo. The Empress was returned to her people, stripped of her command codes, and the humiliation of her defeat broadcast to every Vrax colony as a warning. Humanity had not just survived, it had revealed a terrifying secret. But here is the final surprising detail, the one Curator Vance only learned when he descended to the armory after the dust settled. Among the empty stasis pods, there was a sealed chamber he had never been authorized to open. When he placed his hand on the genetic lock, it recognized him, not as a curator but as direct lineage. The chamber slid open to reveal a single cryo-coffin with a nameplate, General Elias Vance, commander of the Praetorian program. The first warrior to volunteer for the insurance policy was the curator's own great-grandfather. The entire Terran Cultural Preservation Hall was not just a museum or an armory. It was a family promise, kept alive for 6 centuries, waiting for the day when an older species would need to relearn what humanity had never forgotten. We do not kneel, we endure. The Praetorian program was never about weapons, it was about memory. Across 6 centuries, a single family guarded a secret not out of fear, but out of faith. Faith that the day would come when humanity would need to remember what it truly was. The Vrax Dominion learned that lesson in a single hour, inside a quiet museum that turned out to be the deadliest armory in the galaxy. They came expecting a surrender and found instead a species that had planned for its own extinction and refused to accept it. The Praetorians are back in stasis now, waiting in their hundreds across hidden sites around the world, because the universe is large and full of things that have not yet learned to leave us alone. That leaves a lingering question, one worth carrying long after the story ends. The insurance policy worked because someone believed in it. Curator Vance's great-grandfather entrusted his own bloodline with a duty most would call insane. How many of us would keep that promise, generation after generation, with no guarantee the call would ever come. The Praetorians were not the miracle. The miracle was the ordinary people who refused to forget them. If this story reminded you why humanity's flame never truly goes out, please like this video, share it with a fellow sci-fi fan, and subscribe so you never miss our next journey into the unknown. We tell the stories of what happens when the impossible meets the indomitable. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep looking up. The stars are full of surprises, and so are we.